Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about ways that players might overcome the prisoner's dilemma. So when we talked about the prisoner's dilemma, we realized that collectively, socially, the two players in the game might be better off with a cooperative outcome in the prisoner's dilemma, that is not talking or not confessing. But individually, they each have private incentives that push them towards ratting the other person out, and they end up in a socially inferior position, right? Where they end up both going to jail for a longer period of time, where if they had stayed quiet, they could have both gone to jail for a much shorter period of time. So that's the cooperative outcome and then the likely Nash equilibrium. So is there a way to overcome the prisoner's dilemma and basically achieve the cooperative outcome? Well, and there might be, in cases where there are enforcement mechanisms. So I'd like to outline several different enforcement mechanisms. We'll start with a fairly straightforward one, and that is, what if they care about each other? If the two players care about, we'll say, one another. So in, using a little more econ language, we're going to call this interdependent utility functions. Interdependent utility functions. So this just means that they get utility. So if you thought about a person's utility function, what is it that gives me utility? Well, doing things I like, being successful, at work, so earning money, staying healthy, getting outside, building things that work, whatever it is. Those are things that might give me utility. But what else shows up in my utility function is the happiness of my family. So when my kids succeed, that gives me happiness, right, or utility as well. So seeing my kids happy, seeing them being successful, in sports or music or school or whatever it is, those are things that may be in their utility function, right? So when my son plays well in a basketball game, he's happy, and that gives him utility, but that also gives me utility. So if the two players care about the well-being and the happiness and the utility of each other, then that might make it easier to cooperate. And in fact, when we do examples in class, right, if we were all physically together, we could do a prisoner's dilemma type question where the cooperative outcome gives people a certain amount of extra credit, but you can always sort of cheat on that. Well, you don't really make an agreement, but where you also try to make yourself better off at the expense of the other person, and that ends up in a suboptimal outcome for both. And what we see is that there is a certain amount of cooperation, right? Sometimes people do just cooperate. Now, another reason that you might see that cooperation, so other than you just care about, so if your friend is the other player, you might cooperate. But even if you don't know them, if you're going to play the game more than once, then it might make sense to cooperate. So another potential enforcement mechanism, or another situation where you might cooperate, is where you care about your reputation, or you're involved in a repeated game, not a one-shot deal. So the prisoner's dilemma, as we described it, is a one-shot deal. But what if the same two people cooperate? What if they commit crimes regularly together? So I don't know if you like this genre of movie, but I like Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12. The Italian Job. There's a series of movies about breaking into vaults, and banks and stealing, precious items. That same crew works together in multiple movies, right? So therefore, they might not sell each other out, right? They might not defect. That's what we say in game theory when you choose the strategy that makes you better off in either case. So if you defect rather than cooperate, you might not if it's a repeated game. And what we see is that if you play the game over and over, if both parties can cooperate, they can earn a much larger payoff over the whole game rather than defecting. Because if you defect, even if one party cooperates and the other one defects, and so one of them gets rich and one gets the sucker payoff, that's what happens if you cooperate and your other player defects. That's going to lead to mutual defection in future rounds. And so it might be the case that if you're going to play over and over, both parties see that it's better to cooperate, at least to experiment. So in actual experiments with this, tit for tat, that is doing whatever your opponent did in the last round, has often been shown to be the winningest strategy in a prisoner's dilemma experiment. A real world example of this would be your local mechanic, right, or where you take your car. So maybe if you have a car, you have a regular place that you take it for service, and if it's an independent mechanic, it might be someone that you or your family or someone you trust has found to be reliable and honest and reasonable. And we all have this fear, especially as cars are more complex, that will get ripped off, right? That the mechanic will tell us there's something wrong that's really not, and then they'll either replace parts needlessly, or they'll tell us they're replacing parts and not actually do it. And the cars are complex enough these days that for most of us, we don't always know exactly what they're saying or what they're doing. So there's always a fear, and I think it's a well-founded fear, that will get ripped off, right, by a mechanic. And but why is it that there are honest mechanics? Well, I mean, maybe it's just because they believe that's the right thing to do, that they wouldn't want to be cheated. They're not going to cheat other people. They have a moral compass. That's possible, and I think likely. But on top of that, most mechanics make money from repeat business, right? If you rip someone off, well, eventually they'll figure it out and they'll stop going there, and they may give you bad reviews. So they may care about their reputation. They may care about what people say about them, because that helps them get business, and they may care about repeated business, because somebody who comes back, over and over the course of years and decades, represents a lot of potential business. And the people, then the reputation, and to the extent that they refer other people, that's valuable. And so people may not, and so for that reason, in a small town, or in where there's a lot of repeat business and word of mouth, and now there's Yelp and Angie's List and other online Google reviews, you may care about that. When your car breaks down on a road trip and you're in a different state and you get towed to whatever garage is closest to the interstate exit where you broke down, if you're concerned about getting ripped off, then it's probably more warranted, right? Because that's probably a one-off. You're not going to be a regular customer. Now, hopefully, especially in the age of internet reviews, they may still try not to rip you off. But at any rate, that's an example of where repeated interactions might lead to cooperative behavior, right, and overcome the prisoner's dilemma. Another one that we'll list here is contract or illegal enforcement. Now, you could either make a deal ahead of time to not talk. Now, that's tricky because in the U.S., at law, that would not be enforced. So if Al and Bob signed a contract that if we're ever picked up and accused of a crime, nobody will talk about this, and if the other person does, they're subject to damages. So meaning, like, if Al rats Bob out, that Bob gets a monetary payment from Al for breaking the contract, that would not be enforced, right? So at law in the U.S., that would be considered contrary to public policy, and that contract would not be enforced. So that's less likely. But are there other arrangements of enforcing that? So if you've watched any mob movies, right, or you're familiar with gangs or mobs, there's a structure, right, and there's discipline. And if you violate the rules, right, there are consequences. And if Al and Bob are part of the same organized crime syndicate, if they're part of the same mob, if they're foot soldiers in the same gang, and one of them rats the other out, there may be consequences to that. And so in that case, the payoffs that we see in the Matrix, those are only part of the story. That there are additional costs or benefits, in this case, consequences, costs, that would flow from ratting the other person out. So the parties may not defect, because even though they might get released, after trial, they might be looking over their shoulder and be fearful that there are, sort of illegal consequences, right? That there will be retaliation from the organization that they ratted out, in the process. So that I refer to as illegal enforcement, right? There might be other ways of incentivizing people not to talk. All right. How about we call the next one 4? The next thing I want to put on the list here is government regulation. You're like, what? How does that work? Well, let me give you an example. Let's talk about advertising. So here's to get back into using game theory, right? Using the tools. Here's an example. I shamelessly took this out of a prior textbook. I should redo it myself because I don't like the red and blue because they made Coke blue and Pepsi red. It makes no sense to me. But imagine that you have two large soda manufacturers and that they represent a pretty significant proportion of the soda industry. And they are making a decision about whether or not to advertise. And so we have two players, Coke and Pepsi, and we're going to give them two strategy choices, either to advertise or not advertise. And let's specifically say TV advertising, because TV advertising is particularly expensive, right? I mean, all advertising costs money, but national, network TV advertising is especially costly. So they could choose to advertise on TV or not advertise on TV. And so here's the question. Now we're going to, hypothesize a little bit, but what is the purpose of advertising? So if you're Coke or Pepsi, is it to introduce your product to new people who don't know about it? Maybe, but probably not so much. I think it's more about getting soda drinkers to choose your brand, and maybe keeping soda on front of mind, so that I don't know if people drink a little more if they keep seeing it on TV than if they don't. Maybe, but I think for most of us, we know it's out there, right? We know Coke and Pepsi exist. We know that they are sweet and bubbly and they have caffeine, and so they're delicious. We also know that they're full of high fructose corn syrup and they're not particularly good for us. And so we're all, we make our own decisions about whether and how much, right, to drink. So does TV advertising cause us to drink more? I don't know. They probably want it. They probably hope so. But I think more than that, it might cause us to be like, I feel like Coke today. I'm going to have a soda. I'll have Coke or I'll have Pepsi. So is it about trying to get people to choose their brand when they do choose to have a soda? So that's the question. But that's sort of the logic that's underlying these payoffs. And so the idea is that, let me highlight here and then we'll erase this. If neither one advertises, right? So if neither party advertises, they each make $750 million in profit. But if both of them advertise, right? If Pepsi chooses to advertise and Coke chooses to advertise, then they each make $500 million in profit. And that's based on the idea that they don't actually sell a lot more soda than they would if they didn't advertise at all, because face it, most of us know that soda is out there and that it's pretty good. And so the advertising may not cause a huge increase in consumption, but if TV advertising costs a lot of money, then they basically have a little bit more in revenue but a lot more in costs, and the net result is that it's less than it would be without the advertising. But the thing that they're afraid of is that Pepsi advertises and Coke doesn't, right? So if Pepsi advertises and Coke doesn't, in our example, Pepsi makes $900 million in profit and Coke only makes $400 million. Why? Because Pepsi is front of mind, right? And as people who are drinking soda drink, they're going to choose Pepsi. At least that's what we're supposing, right, for our purposes here. And similarly, if Coke advertises and Pepsi doesn't, it puts us down here where Coke earns lots of profit because they advertised, and Pepsi, who's now semi-forgotten, earns a lot less. They didn't spend money on advertising, but then they didn't sell as much. So that's the idea. Now, if we break this down using the arrows and say, all right, let's think about Coke's decision. Coke decides up or down. The Coke profits are in the blue triangles in each cell. So if Pepsi advertises, because Coke doesn't know ahead of time what Pepsi's going to do. And by the way, antitrust laws make it illegal for Coke and Pepsi to get together and decide whether or not to advertise. So if Coke and Pepsi collectively get together and make a deal not to advertise on TV, that violates antitrust laws, right? So that's illegal. So if Coke says, all right, well, if Pepsi does not advertise, and Coke chooses to not advertise, they make $750 million. If they do advertise, they make $900 million. And so as it turns out, 900 million in profit is better than 750 million in profit. So if Pepsi does not advertise, Coke is better off advertising on TV. Now, what if Pepsi chooses to advertise? If Pepsi advertises on TV, then and Coke chooses not to, it makes 400 million, and it chooses to advertise, it makes 500 million. And if I'm a profit maximizing firm, 500 million is preferred over 4. So if Pepsi advertises on TV, Coke is better off also advertising on TV. So does Coke have a dominant strategy? Yes, right? The strategy that makes Coke better off no matter what Pepsi does is to advertise on TV. So they have a dominant strategy, and that's to advertise on TV. Let me try to write that again so it's somewhat legible. I'll write it out. A dominant strategy, and that is to advertise on TV. That makes Coke better off no matter what Pepsi does. Pick a different color here. We'll use brown. Brown sounds ugly. Let's do this dark blue. Now, Pepsi, at the same time and simultaneously and in the dark, has to make its decision. It says, I don't know what I don't know what Coke will do. Suppose Coke chooses not to advertise. Then Pepsi could either not advertise and make 750 or advertise and make 900. Right? Remember, Pepsi is choosing left or right. Right? So comparing 750 and 900, Pepsi is better off advertising if Coke chooses not to advertise. Now, what if Coke chooses to advertise, right? If Coke chooses to advertise, that puts us in the bottom row. And then Pepsi is saying, well, if I don't advertise, I make 400 million. If I do advertise, I make 500 million. A profit maximizing firm would prefer 500 over 400. So if Coke does advertise, Pepsi is better off also advertising. Does Pepsi have a dominant strategy? Right? Do both the arrows point the same way? Is Pepsi made better off with one particular strategy choice no matter what Coke does? Yes. And that is to advertise on TV. They have a dominant strategy, and it is to advertise on TV. So there is a Nash equilibrium, right? And the Nash equilibrium is the box where all the arrows point in. It's the place with no regrets, right? It's the place where if you ended up there, nobody would independently say, man, I wish I'd made the other choice. So there is a Nash equilibrium, and it's right here. It's the bottom right. Right? It's the strategy where both people advertise, and they each make 500 million. But what is the cooperative outcome? What is the outcome that collectively earns them the most profit? Well, the one that would earn them the most profit is up here, right? This is the cooperative outcome. So let me label that in pink to match. Let's see, right there, we'll put it here. The cooperative outcome is up here where nobody advertises. But that's not a Nash equilibrium, because if you ended up there, either party would say, man, if I had advertised, I could have made even more. Right? So if you ended up there, then Pepsi would have said, yeah, but if I advertised, I would have made 900, and Coke would have said the same thing. And so because of their dominant strategies, they're likely to end up down here unless they have an enforcement mechanism. Is there an enforcement mechanism that could help them? Well, out of our list, maybe repeated game, right? But it doesn't seem to be effective. We see them both advertising on TV, and maybe our scenario is incorrect, right? Maybe it's maybe you do increase soda consumption overall, so that they're better off that way. But at any rate, it would certainly be illegal for them to get together and coordinate and say we're not going to advertise on TV. So what we see is that Coke and Pepsi both advertise on TV. You can see this, when you watch Super Bowl commercials and at other points during the year as well. Now, that's probably not a surprise, but why do I show you this? What about tobacco? When was the last time you saw a cigarette ad on TV? cigarette ads on TV? You haven't. So I have a link here. I won't play it during the video, but if you Google cool cigarette ads, and on YouTube, you can find them. I'm sure that other cigarettes have them as well. So up until I think it was 1971, cigarettes companies advertised on TV, and now they don't. And in 1971, it became illegal. There's a federal law that made it illegal for cigarette companies to advertise on TV. Why? Well, it's a public health argument, right? Cigarettes are known to be, harmful to our health. They're addictive. They're, kids might be especially susceptible. And I honestly think the best argument for this law is, if you're going to make this law that you can't advertise cigarettes on TV, the best argument is probably for kids, right? Trying not to get kids addicted to cigarettes because it's such a difficult habit to kick, right? And then they spend a lifetime smoking, and there are lots of serious health consequences as a result of that. But what is the, shall we say, silver lining for the tobacco companies? If you're thinking the two big companies are RJR, right? RJ Reynolds and Philip Morris. Those are the two big tobacco companies. And so if you were, let's pick a new color here, we'll just use black. If you were to cross off Pepsi and you were to write RJ Reynolds, and you were to cross off Coca-Cola and you were to write Philip Morris, I don't know how many L's they use in Philip Morris, but we'll use 2. You know what I mean? So, and you labeled these the two big tobacco companies. Those are your two big players, and they're trying to decide whether or not to advertise on TV. If our assumptions about the soda industry hold, then TV advertising, take the kids out of it, because I think the kids are at least a stronger argument. But for the adults, I don't know if you smoke or not, right? I don't smoke. I think most of you probably don't smoke, as well. You made a choice not to. Do you know that cigarettes exist, right? Have you tried them? Can you try them if you want to, right? And you choose not to. Sure, right? We know that cigarettes are out there. It's not like if I saw cigarette ads on TV, all of a sudden I would be like, hey, there's something new. Let's try that. I really believe that I could see cigarette ads on TV and it wouldn't affect me or turn me into a smoker. I think that's probably true. Now, if I were a cigarette smoker and I saw ads, would that give me a craving right then? And, would I smoke more? Maybe, but cigarettes are addictive, right? So the nicotine craving in your body is already causing smokers to want, another cigarette, in the near term. So is it the case that TV advertising turns a lot of non-smokers into smokers? I don't know. I'm skeptical about that. But does TV advertising cause smokers to think about other brands? Be like, maybe I should try, Marlboro or Cool or Camel or, pick your cigarette. Is part of TV advertising about getting smokers to choose an existing brand? And if that's the case, then it functions sort of like what we had done for Pepsi and Coke. Only the takeaway here is that this part down here where both people advertise is now illegal, right? So basically, if it's illegal to advertise on TV, then you can't be in the right row. And if it's illegal to advertise on TV, you can't be in the bottom. I'm sorry, that was first the right column or the bottom row. So if you take those out, then all of a sudden, the spot where you end up is now up here in the top left, which is the cooperative outcome. And so the sort of exciting, counterintuitive, surprising, result is that the ban, right? I think it's 1971. It's around the early 70s. Ban on TV ads. It may have protected, the public welfare. It may have been good for public health, especially with regard to kids, but it may have also been good for RJ Reynolds and Philip Morris because it eliminated the option of them sinking tons and tons of money into TV advertising, at least in the short term. Now, if you can't get kids addicted to your cigarettes, then maybe your long-term prospects are smaller than they otherwise would have been. But at any rate, something to think about. And that's why when I say government regulation, right? You could think, for example, ban on TV tobacco ads. So, and then there's one more potential enforcement mechanism that I want to throw out there. This is another counterintuitive one. I have to draw it in. Do I not have it set up? Nope. Oh, I do. Is it here? Nope. All right, I'll draw it. I just forgot what I had on my slides. So imagine that you have two big sellers of a particular game. And so we're going to use Walmart and Target. They'll be our two sellers, and they can choose the high price or the low price. So pick some new gaming system. I'm not sort of up to date on what the latest Xbox is, or its price for that matter. But let's suppose that you could sell at $300, right? Price equals $300, or you could discount it and sell it at $250. And let's say that both of them have the same choices. Walmart will either sell at the list price of $300, or it will discount and sell at $250, and Target will do the same thing. And I understand it's really more of a spectrum. It's really not, just one or the other. But let's just simplify and say it's going to be either 300. Whoa, that took away more than I meant to. I was trying to just clean up the Walmart there. It's either 300 or 250. Let me fix this. So I wrote in Walmart and Target in there so you know where the payoffs are. Now, if both of them sell at the high price, presumably they will have the biggest profits, right? Because they'll sell a lot and they'll earn the biggest margin, on what they sell. So let's say that their monthly profits, if they do this, are 10,000 and 10,000, right? That they each make 10,000 from selling it. But if they both sell at the low price, they'll sell more, but their margins are much smaller. And let's say that they each earn 6,000. But if one of them goes low and the other one goes high, right? So if Walmart sells at the high price and Target sells at the low price, then Target will sell a whole bunch and Walmart will not sell so many, right? Because if people are aware of the prices at the other place, Walmart will get kind of shut out. And let's say that they only make 3,000, but Target makes, we'll say, 12. Right, so Target will make more because they'll sell so many, and Walmart will get shut out. They won't sell as many because there won't be that many people who want to pay the higher price when they could go to Target and pay the low price. And then similarly, this is a symmetric game. So we'll say if Walmart undercuts Target and Target is left, at the high price, then Target will just make 3,000 in profit that week, and Walmart will make the 12,000 in profit. Right. So you see how I did that? The Walmart number is first, Target number is second, and those are their weekly profit numbers. So we'll make a note here: weekly profit numbers, and so these are goods, right? So you'd prefer higher numbers over lower numbers. So let's see, what do their strategies look like? Well, if Target goes high, we'll do Walmart's decision process first. If Target goes high, then Walmart is looking at either 10,000 or 12,000, right? 10 if they go high and 12 if they go low. Now, a profit maximizing firm, right, would prefer 12,000 in profit over 10. So if Target goes high, Walmart is better going low, right, and selling at 250. Now, what if Target goes low? That puts us in the right column. We're looking at Walmart's numbers because we're thinking about Walmart's decisions. And if Target goes low, Walmart can either go high and make 3 or go low and make 6. Probably prefer low, right? They'd prefer 6,000 over 3,000 in profit. So it turns out, does Walmart have a dominant strategy? Yes, right? They have a dominant strategy, and the dominant strategy is to go with the low price. Now, what about Target? Target says, well, I have to make my decision about what price to set. If I'm going to advertise it in the Sunday paper, I have to make that decision by Thursday, so I have to decide in the dark without knowing what Walmart's prices are. And let's say if Walmart goes with the high price, then Target is looking at either $10,000 or $12,000 in profit. As it turns out, they would prefer the $12,000. So if Walmart goes high, Target is better off going low. Right? But what if Walmart goes low? If Walmart advertises the low price and Target goes the high price, they make $3,000. If they also go with the low price, they make $6,000, which is preferred. We prefer the $6,000, right, over the $3,000. Does Target have a dominant strategy? Yeah, right. Target has a dominant strategy, and it is to also choose the low price. So there is, is there a Nash equilibrium? Is there a box where both arrows point in? If both players have a dominant strategy, there will be a Nash equilibrium, right? And it's right here, right? This is the Nash. Oops, hold on. There's a Nash equilibrium. This is the likely outcome. Is that the cooperative outcome? No, right? The cooperative outcome, the situation where collectively they earn the most profits, right? Because down here in the Nash equilibrium, they make a total of $12,000 in profits. If they were both to charge the high price and not undercut each other, they could make 10 each or 20,000, right? So the cooperative outcome, oops, that's not a good color. The cooperative outcome is up here, where they both charge the high price. But the incentives push each seller to undercut. And there have been a lot of studies that have shown, even in non-competitive markets, like in oligopolies, that there is a lot of competitive pressure toward the lower price. Right? So it may not be, in terms of efficiency, it may not get you exactly to where perfect competition does in theory, but remember, there aren't that many perfectly competitive markets anyway. And so one of the interesting things in the field of economics, where they're looking at market structures and they're looking at the organization of sectors, of the economy, is that it doesn't take a lot of players, a lot of sellers, to actually push in the direction of the competitive outcome. So right here you can see that they will tend to lower their price, even if there's just, in our case, there's just two. A lot of times you have more than that. You have other sellers as well, but that there is competitive pressure to expand output and lower price. So that's, sort of an interesting aside. Now, what is this last potential thing I want to put on our list of ways of enforcement mechanisms? And this is the one that I find also surprising and counterintuitive. At Christmas time, and like throughout the year, but did you ever see, like, on the toy catalogs or like the flyers, the websites, a price match guarantee? In my office, I have a handful of old, flyers from the papers around Christmas time. And, Toys R Us, when it was still a thing, and Walmart and Target and, a lot of these big sellers, they have some sort of price match policy, price match guarantee. Best Buy, I think you can go there, and if you can show them an advertised price from another seller, right, they'll match it. Right? So whenever you see that, how does that make you feel as a consumer? Right? That usually makes us happy, right? Because we're like, look, there are these Best Buy, and Walmart and Target. They're all saying, look, if you find a better price somewhere else, you let us know and we will match it. Right? We are out to help you and protect you and make sure you get the best deal. Well, that's great, right? That makes us happy. Right? But should it? So here's the thing. If I I think I'll recopy it. So let me make this a little smaller so we can recopy it quickly. So we'll put Walmart and Target, and they could charge $300 or they could charge $250. And we'll put in Walmart and Target. Now, let me put these numbers in as well. 10,000 I think I had, right? But, or 6 and 6. Okay, let's make this bigger so we can work with it. Because now we're going to add one thing. Wow, it looks really sloppy. Let me see if I can fix it up a little bit. Six and 6. All right. Only now we're going to put a little asterisk in here, and they are going to have a price match policy. So when they advertise in the Sunday paper, the little asterisk here means that they have a price match guarantee. So when Target advertises a price of $250, it says, but if you can find a lower advertised price somewhere else, we'll match it. And if Target advertises at $300, that means if you can find a lower advertised price somewhere else, we'll match it. So how does that change our thing? If both of them advertise at $250 with a price match ad, then there's no change, right? They both advertise at $250. The lowest price is $250. They both still make $6. If they both advertise at $300 with a price match guarantee, but they're both at $300, and let's assume away any other potential sellers, then they both, sell at $300, and there's no issue. The change comes in these corner cells, right? The northeast and southwest corners, where one of them advertises at $300 and the other advertises at $250, but they both have price match ads. So what's that mean? I could walk in, so let's pick this cell up here. If Target advertises at $250 and Walmart chooses $300, you can go into Target and buy it for $250, or you can walk into Walmart and say, Target's got it for $250, and you can buy it for $250 there as well. So if we assume that the consumers are knowledgeable, right, and they make use of that, then this top right cell where Walmart advertised at $300 with a price match ad and Target advertised at $250 means effectively you can go into either store and buy it for $250. And what do the payoffs look like if you can go into either store and buy it for $250? Well, we already know what that looks like. That's the bottom right cell, right? So we're going to put $6,000 each in here. Because now Walmart doesn't get caught with a higher price and not selling any units. They can sell as well because they're automatically guaranteed to match Target's price. And then what about the other scenario? That's the bottom left. If Target advertises at $300 with a price match and Walmart undercuts them, at $250, then effectively you could go into either store and buy it for $250, right? And we know that the payoffs in that case look like this. So, oops, I lost the T in Target, didn't I? At the top of it, there we go. So what does that mean then? Well, let's think about Walmart's decision first. If Target advertises at $300, so if Target sells at $300, Walmart could sell at $300 and make 10, or it could sell at $250 and make 6. So in this case, it's better off advertising at $300 with a price match ad as well, because 10 is better than 6. And over here, if Target were to advertise at $250, then if Walmart goes high with a price match, it gets 6, and if it goes low at $250, then it still gets 6. So there's no real preference here. Does everybody see that? There's no real difference to Walmart if it goes high or low if Target goes low. Now, this is a symmetric game, so pretty soon you can probably figure out what's going to happen for Target. Whoops, what just happened? Sorry about that. So let's think about Target here. If Target, Target says, what if Walmart chooses 300? Then if Target goes 300, it gets $6,000 in profit that week, and if it goes to 250, it gets only 6. Did I say 6? I meant 10. 10 or 6. So 10 is preferred to 6. So if Walmart goes at 300 with a price match, Target is better off going to 300 with a price match as well. But what if Target goes low at 250? Then Walmart is looking at 6 or 6. There's no real preference there. Both of them make them sort of equally well off. So does Target have a dominant strategy? Well, no, not technically. Target does not have a strategy that makes it better off regardless of what Walmart does. Does Walmart have a dominant strategy? No, not strictly, because 300 is better if Target chooses 300, and then it's indifferent if Target goes 250. So there's no dominant strategies, but is there a Nash equilibrium? There is, right? There is a Nash equilibrium. Get the right pen here. There is a Nash equilibrium, and the Nash is now up here, right? Both arrows point in this box. If both of them advertise at 300 with a price match ad, nobody after the fact says, man, I wish I'd made the other choice. I should have undercut them, because undercutting them just means that they automatically have promised to match you and you both make less money. So this is also the cooperative outcome. So this is the part that, I love game theory because I think we get some really surprising counterintuitive results. That price match ad that we thought made us so happy, maybe we should not be so happy about that. Because the price match guarantee actually makes it easier for sellers to advertise at a high price without the risk of getting undercut and outsold by their competitors. Now, is it perfect? Is it as clear-cut as our examples here? No, probably not. Because going in and showing them the lower price is still a little bit more of a hassle than just going to the other place and buying it automatically at the low price. So it's probably not as complete as it is in our example here, but the intuition, I think, is legitimate. And that's the part that I think is surprising. We love those price match guarantees because they make us feel good, but now when we study them and push back and think about it, those might actually be good for the sellers because they reduce their risk of getting undercut if they try to charge a little higher price rather than the very lowest price. So when we go back to our list of ways to overcome the prisoner's dilemma, the last thing, right? So we had a written list. I had written the first 4. The thing that we can add now is a price match policy. That's another way that you might overcome the incentives of the prisoner's dilemma and end up at the cooperative outcome.